This is Korean news for March 21, 2022. As the Corona Omicron pandemic passed, the cumulative number of confirmed cases of corona exceeded 9.3 million. Judging from the current incidence, it is expected that the number will exceed 10 million within 2 to 3 days. That means 1 in 5 people will get it. The government announced that, although the corona epidemic continues to increase, social distancing has been slightly eased in consideration of the situation, such as a slight decrease in the effect of distance due to Omicron's high transmission power. The social distancing, which will be eased from today, 21st, will increase the number of possible private gatherings from 6 to 8 people regardless of whether or not they are vaccinated, and the business hours will remain the same until 11 p.m. as before. Accordingly, the limit of the number of people for private meetings has been expanded to 8, and the existing standards for operating hours and measures for events and assemblies remain the same. Events, gatherings, and religious facilities can hold up to 299 people regardless of whether they are vaccinated or not. The adjusted social distancing will be in effect for 2 weeks until April 3. In the future, the government plans to review the full-scale easing of operating hours, private gatherings, and events and assemblies while confirming the reduction of the epidemic after the peak and the capacity of the medical system. They say they were disappointed with Baekjeong-won Pizza and criticize it for its size. While Baekjeong-won, CEO of the Born Korea, a culinary researcher and restaurant business owner, launched a low-cost pizza brand, some netizens are posting bad reviews saying, it's disappointing. Recently, on online communities and blogs, there have been postings stating that they have eaten Bakeboy Pizza. Bakeboy Pizza is a low-cost pizza brand specializing in packaging and delivery launched by the Born Korea at the end of last year. Unlike the existing franchise pizzas, which cost more than 20,000 won, the low price of the low 10,000 won was set, raising expectations from consumers. However, if you look at the actual reviews, you get unexpected bad reviews, who point out that the size is too small compared to other pizzas. They thought that they would offer an inexpensive menu of 10,000 won in a similar size to existing pizzas, but contrary to expectations, the cost effectiveness is inferior. In fact, if you look at the photos released through an online community, the size of the Bakeboy Pizza is similar to that of a 500 ml Coke bottle. Netizens expressed their disappointment by saying, "It is much smaller than I thought, it is the size of a palm, it is about the medium size of a franchise pizza." The prices for Super Bakeboy Pizza, Meat Bomb Pizza, and Bulldog Legend Pizza range from 10,900 won to 14,900 won, which is cheaper than other franchise products. But only one size. Accordingly, the Born Korea is planning to run a test operation by increasing the number of pizza types and sizes to reflect the needs of consumers. The average annual salary of employees of the 4 major domestic banks has exceeded 100 million won for the first time in history. According to the 2021 business report published by the 4 major banks on the 21st, the average salary of bank employees such as Kookmin, Shinyan, Hana, and Woori Bank last year was 155 million won. It was 95.5 million won in 2019 and 98 million won in 2020. By bank, Kookmin Bank had the most with 112 million won. It was followed by Shinyan Bank, 170 million won, Hana Bank, 106 million won, and Woori Bank, 97 million won. In terms of increase, Shinyan Bank, 11.5%, had the largest increase, followed by Kookmin Bank, 7.7%, Hana Bank, 9.3%, and Woori Bank, 2.1%. The increase in average salaries for bank employees is attributed to increased net income. The 4 banks recorded record-breaking performance last year exceeding 2 trillion won. As a result, the average salary seems to have risen as the performance-related pay increased. Kookmin Bank recorded a net profit of 2.5908 trillion won, the largest in the banking sector last year, while Shinyan Bank recorded 2.49 trillion won, Hana Bank 2.507 trillion won, and Woori Bank 2.3755 trillion won. Meanwhile, the number of employees at the 4 major banks stood at 57,274 as of the end of last year, down 622 from the previous year, 57,896. The number of branches operated by the 4 major banks was 3,079, a decrease of 224 from the previous year. It has been found that Korea's holding tax burden far exceeds the OECD average of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The share of holding tax as a percentage of total tax as well as the share of holding tax as a percentage of gross domestic product, GDP, also exceeded the OECD average, making it a clear country with a high tax burden. In the midst of this, it is known that the government is strongly considering a plan to return the burden of the ownership tax, such as the property tax to be imposed this year and the comprehensive real estate tax per household, to the level of 2021. According to the government on the 20th, the Ministry of Strategy and Finance and the Ministry of Public Administration and Security are planning to present a plan to ease the ownership tax burden right after the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport announced this year's increase in public housing prices on the 23rd. The Democratic Party of Korea recently announced that it would return the tax on ownership of one homeowner per household to the level of 2020. The Democratic Party of Korea has started to ease the property ownership tax. Some of the leadership are even talking about exempting the comprehensive real estate tax for only one homeowner per household. It is analyzed that the Democratic Party, which judged that the Moon Jae-in government's policy of strengthening real estate taxation was the main cause of the presidential defeat, has set out to correct the trajectory ahead of the local elections. As President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol also promised to ease the holding tax, it is predicted that the related legislation will gain momentum. However, as there are not many negative opinions within the Democratic Party on the easing of the taxation, there is a possibility that internal redness may arise. According to the industry on the 5th, the flagship smartphone Galaxy S22 series released by Samsung Electronics last month is forced to run GOES, which degrades performance when using certain applications such as games, which is strongly opposed by users. In many online communities, including Samsung members, which is officially operated by Samsung Electronics, users who protested the enforcement policy of GOES stood out. GOES is a device that adjusts GPU performance when running games that require high-level computation. By adjusting the screen resolution and artificially lowering the performance, it reduces the computational burden and prevents the smartphone from overheating. Samsung Electronics installed GOES before the Galaxy S22 series, but users who want to enjoy high-performance games on their smartphones can use a paid app to deactivate GOES. However, in this series, the One UI 4.0 update made it mandatory to install GOES and made it impossible to delete GOES even with a bypass method. Samsung Electronics' mandatory installation of GOES and forced execution is a measure to prevent overheating from the previous Galaxy S21 series. An official from Samsung Electronics explained, if you play high-end games, the heat will continue, and in this case, safety problems such as low-temperature burns may occur. However, users are complaining that the performance of the product is inferior to that of the smartphone released 6 years ago, or I bought the product believing that it performed better than the previous one. Some users opened an online cafe saying they would file a class action lawsuit. As complaints grew, Samsung Electronics eventually decided to update the software so that users could choose whether to apply the app or not. However, it has been criticized for not properly understanding the market needs in the early stages of product launch. President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol will hold a luncheon with 6 economic groups on the 21st. President-elect Yoon met with the heads of the National Federation of Businesses, the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Korea International Trade Association, the Korea Federation of Small and Medium Enterprises, the Korea Employers Federation, and the Korea Federation of SMEs at the office of the Presidential Transition Committee on the same day to discuss the company's current issues. At the meeting, President-elect Yoon is expected to explain the direction of the new government's industrial policy and listen to the difficulties faced by the business world. There is a possibility that the Economics Subcommittee and Acquisition Committee member will be present. During his presidential campaign, President-elect Yoon promised to increase private-led job creation by eliminating unnecessary regulations and encouraging corporate creativity and innovation. On the 14th, President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol confirmed the relocation of the office to Yongsan within a week of forming the task force for relocation of the Blue House office. In the process, the speed control theory was once raised within the Presidential Transition Committee. However, President-elect Yoon chose to break through the fast-track ceremony head-on under the pretext of overcoming the imperial presidential system. On January 27, Yoon-elect promised to relocate the office, saying, "If I become president, the presidential office will be built in the Gwangae-Wamun government complex in Seoul." Accordingly, on the 14th, President-elect Yoon formed a task force led by Rep. Han Hong-yoon of People's Power and Young Hyun Kim, former head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and began a full-scale review. As President-elect Yoon promised, the Seoul government complex was initially the #1 candidate for relocation. However, it was excluded from the list of candidates due to concerns about security issues and inconvenience to citizens due to restrictions on communication around the presidential office. Inside the Transition Committee, it is reported that the current Blue House Secretariat building was used as an office for about a year and then a plan to move it in stages was considered. However, on the morning of the 20th, President-elect Yoon said, "Once you enter the Blue House, it will be difficult to get out again," so the final decision was made to relocate the office to Yongsan. On the 20th, President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol dismissed the possibility of withdrawal by revealing a plan to relocate the presidential office to the Yongsan Ministry of National Defense on the 20th. At a press conference held at the Korea Financial Research and Training Institute, where the Transition Committee's office is located, on the same day, President-elect Yoon expressed a negative stance on the question of whether it can be withdrawn if public opinion is not good. President-elect Yoon said, "There is no point in Gwangae-Wamun during the election process, but I left the Blue House and said that I would return the Blue House to the people, and many people thought it well and supported it. I think that the philosophy and determination of the person in charge of the government is more important than anything else." Thank you for watching today. Please like and subscribe.